Plutus Sports Analytics is a company based on minimizing the uncertainty in sports betting to help you maximize your profit. Newfoundland's first sports analytics team provides daily predictions for all Major League sports so you can win big. Whether you want to hit MLB picks out of the park or get a slam dunk on your NBA betting tickets, Plutus is a company of choice. Head to PlutusSportsAnalytics.com. That is PLUTUS sportsanalytics.com and use promo code JSP20 for 20% off their deadly service. And now, let's get to the show. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the J. Stevens Podcast. This is episode number 174, dedicated to a man who on February 11th, 1978, recorded the 25th hat trick in New York Islander history. Mr. Dennis Potvin, and as always, thank you for listening and downloading another episode of the podcast. On today's episode, we're joined by Mr. Cody Guinn as him and I recap what we watched and witnessed in Super Bowl 55. Every now and then in podcasting, there are hosts that come on where things just, they click immediately. No questions asked. You realize you and that individual that you were recording with at that time, there is something special when you guys are recording and doing a podcast together. That's how things are with Cody and I. Cody and I did a show last year. The first show may have been a year ago this time period. And I'm like, hey, man, this guy's pretty good. I like the back and forth. I like what he brings to the table. I like his knowledge. I like the way he delivers his knowledge. We don't have to ask a bunch of questions back and forth. Just a continual and consistent conversation from beginning to end. Cody Guinn, you guys have realized, has been a person that has been on the podcast pretty frequently lately. We enjoy it, and anytime we get a guest, I get a guest that I enjoy chopping it up this much with, hey, make it consistent. Make it a consistent thing. Because it's not only fun for myself, but I'm pretty sure it's fun for you, the listener, as well. Coming up on February the 20th, not this coming Saturday, the 13th, but February 20th, the Jay Stevens Morning Show is coming back on the Podbean app. This is something I do for free. I do on my own free time. I like the live show. I like being able to take callers. The Podbean app allows you to call in, or there's a chat. You can send a message. I can chat back with you, or listeners can as well. The 20th of February, the Jay Stevens Morning Show is coming back now. I believe the start time will be 10 a.m. Eastern time, 10 a.m. Eastern till 11 a.m. Eastern. You get a little time to relax, maybe get a snack or two, or get your lunch in right before the college basketball starts for the day. It's the perfect time to bring the show back. My work schedule allows me to, and we're not very far away from college basketball conference tournament time to Selection Sunday to the start of the NCAA tournament. I love this time of year. I love all the basketball being played. And it's the perfect time on a Saturday morning to get some thoughts off in a live setting that will not be featured in a podcast episode. Now, the morning show, you will get the audio feed here after the show is live, but catching something live is always better. Let's go ahead and take a trip to Greenville, Tennessee to enjoy my fun conversation with Mr. Cody Guinn as him and I recap Super Bowl 55. Cody Guinn is back with us here on the Jay Stevens Podcast. It's been, I think, the first time in 2021 Cody has been with us in the year. My mind's been so crazy, so busy. I space and I forget if Cody's been with us here in the new year. I know he wrapped up 2020, but Cody is back and he moved. So there's a lot of exciting things going on in Cody's life. We watched a big football game last night. He's getting used to his new space, his new recording area, which may not be the permanent space that he'll have. But Cody Guinn, welcome back to the podcast, man. How you doing?
Man, I'm good. I got online this morning and I found that petition that you signed to make today a national holiday, the day after the Super Bowl, and I signed it because, come on, man, how much longer are we going to have to do this? I shouldn't have to go to work today. supposed to be a big holiday, even though the game ended at like 10-13, but still, we should have had the day off. But yeah, I'm good, man. I'm good.
Good to hear that, man. You're right, man. That petition went out. I'm glad you signed it. No work on the day after the Super Bowl. I mean, Super Bowl Sunday is a holiday, and it's just a day that, well, you ramp up, you get hyped up, you get everybody together if you have a party during normal times, but you sit down, you watch some football. And that's what we did yesterday, Cody. We watched some football. The outcome, I think the margin of victory was a lot wider than maybe, I know it was wider than I expected, and possibly wider than you expected as well.
Yeah, I was completely off. I thought the game would almost go flip flop in my opinion. I really thought maybe this wouldn't be a very close Super Bowl, but I really thought it would be Kansas City that would really control things. I did on my show Tuesday say that I think losing a couple linemen will play a much bigger part in the Super Bowl than people even talked about. I mean, literally, I watched all kinds of Super Bowl stuff Saturday and Sunday, and nobody talks about the fact that Kansas City was down 2 linemen. And I thought that was pretty crazy because, I mean, that O-line's not one of the greatest fully healthy. Patrick Mahomes has had a rougher time in the last 6 games than he did early on. So you can see those guys starting to get a little wear and tear on them. Then you lose Fisher went down with the injury, and you lose a couple others. And it showed last night. That Tampa Bay defense, I thought I had to really check. I thought maybe I done popped in the tape from the 2001 Super Bowl because that Tampa Bay defense looked like the old school John Lynch, Warren Sapp defense. Everywhere you looked, Patrick Mahomes was in trouble. Credit Patrick Mahomes, man. I love that kid. And watching him play has been awesome these last few years. Last night maybe was the most I've ever been impressed with him, as crazy as that is. Blew my mind some of the stuff he was doing. So, of course, all the credit to Tampa Bay. They won the Super Bowl. They look like the best team in the NFL. They are the best team in the NFL. But, man, in my opinion, of course, Tom Brady's stock goes up if it can. I don't know if it can. But to me, Patrick Mahomes' stock went up too. I mean, that dude did everything he could to keep his team alive. They just didn't look like the Chiefs last night. Undisciplined, a lot of silly mistakes, dropped balls. The offense, I don't know. I don't know if it was the schemes that Kansas City wasn't doing, or if it was just a great defensive game by Tampa Bay. I mean, I know they got an amazing coaching staff. Bruce Arians, one of my guys, man. He was with the Steelers for a long time, and that offense that Pittsburgh had was so dynamic. And quickly, though, when things didn't go right, I mean, you got to remember this guy won 2 Super Bowls with Steelers, but once things didn't go right, Pittsburgh just got rid of him because he does have a unique offense, and sometimes it's awesome, and sometimes you're like, what are you doing? But I'm glad to see him get the head coaching Super Bowl win, man. I couldn't be happier for him. Byron Leftwich, a former Steeler as well. Obviously, I'm going all Steelers here. But, I mean, that's just an amazing group of coaches. It's an amazing group of players. A comeback. I mean, Alex Smith, of course, comeback player of the year. But, I mean, number 2 has to be that entire Tampa Bay team. People called for Tom Brady to retire. Only 2 teams really wanted him in the offseason, as crazy as that is. Gronk was sitting on his couch wrestling at WrestleMania. Antonio Brown was about to go play in the XFL. I mean, all these guys were pretty much exiled and done for. They all come together and make a fantastic team. But, yeah, not what I seen coming at all. Not even a little bit.
No, man. And I'm watching the game, and early on, I see the struggles. And I think at some point, the Chiefs would play Chiefs football. But the one thing I think they didn't do consistently, we'll get to this here in a little bit. We're going to play the little thing I sent you a text about here in a second. But the Chiefs didn't really stick with the run. There were flashes of times where the running game was something that got a little momentum, or you saw some flashes of what could be if you stuck with it. But even when the running game was going well, I mean, in first quarter, some okay runs. Beginning of the second half, the running game started to get going. And then you revert back to Patrick Mahomes, his arm to move the ball. That's great. I understand that. But against that defense, against that pass rush, a pass rusher's worst nightmare is a good running game, because they can't just tee off and act like they're running their 100-meter dash, just running, coming out the blocks, try to just go straight and go right to the quarterback. You got to go back to the run. It's almost simple, but football, in a way, can be a simple game. Yes, there are complexities. There are 11 players on each side that make up an offense and a defense, and then 11 that play special teams, whichever group is out there at that time. But sometimes, man, it seems like the Chiefs outsmarted themselves, and the Buccaneers kept it simple. two deep safeties, cover two, or cover two man, whichever version you want to call that, and it worked so well. You can say everything you want about Tom Brady, but that Buccaneers defense, without them, Tom Brady does not have 7 because Patrick Mahomes would have found a way to come back and to do what he had done so many times this year, win a close matchup.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I do think. I mean, that defense played spectacular, and like I said, there was a lot of times where I like halfway through the game started looking at stats because I mean, I just Tampa Bay's defense didn't get talked a lot, so it didn't talked about a lot. So I just wanted to look and see how they had played all year. I mean, that was one of their best all around games all year. But I will say Tom Brady deserves a lot of credit. I mean, 21 for 29. He only threw for 201 yards, but that's this new Tom Brady. He's not going to, he's not a 400-yard passer really anymore. So he played just his style, 3 touchdowns. Gronk played well. And you mentioned Kansas City going to the game or going to the run, and that's something Tampa Bay did well. I mean, Leonard Fournette got loose in that third quarter, started breaking out some good runs. Another guy who, for a moment, looked like he was going to be exiled from the league. This wasn't going to be living up to his potential. Here he comes. RJ2 had a great game with 61 yards. I mean, they were mixing and matching, and I mean, Kansas City just never caught a rhythm. They got emotional a little early. I think they were a little dumb. I mean, I think if we were all a little dumbfounded by how Tampa Bay was playing, imagine how Kansas City felt. They played this team. They beat this team. It wasn't really that long ago. So, I mean, it was not the same team. And it's very clear that these teams went in different directions. I will say that, there was times where there were some passes made that should have been caught that were drops or just some mistiming things, and that was just rare to see. I really think Kansas City, you said it. I mean, they just really got flustered early, and they never recovered.
No.
They never recovered. And going into halftime, Honey Badger was, very visibly upset and shaken. He never recovered from that. He never was able to get back in it. Why would you ever talk smack to Tom Brady? That is the silliest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. I mean, you don't need a reason to motivate a guy that needs no motivation. He's literally the greatest of all time. He was the greatest of all time probably 3 or 4 years ago, and he just keeps going. And to me, I mean, I told myself all day yesterday, man, when I was, making my bets for the game, looking at the prop bets and trying to figure out where I wanted the money to go and everything. And I told myself over and over again, don't you dare bet against Tom Brady. Don't you dare bet against Tom Brady. And I bet against Tom Brady, and I paid for it dearly. Because you have to think, man. I mean, I don't know how long you've been podcasting. I think it's been a couple of years. I've been podcasting a couple of years, been on the radio now for a decade. I mean, Father Time, I've been talking about Father Time and Tom Brady for 8 years. It's to the point now where, I mean, I think it's here. Tom Brady's not the same quarterback he was 5-10 years ago, but he's figuring it out. He might be the first athlete in history to work with Father Time to say, all right, well, I don't have that same arm strength. Let's change it up. And he's doing that. If this dude wants to play to 45, I mean, he's going to have a place to play until he's 45. And I really think at this point, as long as he's smart about the way he takes care of his body and the way his offenses are forming, I mean, this guy literally has got 3-4 more years left in him, which is baffling and crazy to even think about. But I mean, from what I seen last night, again, you look at those numbers, that's not what the NFL is now, going 21 to 29, 200 yards, usually 21 completions. That's going to net you a higher amount of yards in today's NFL. And then, like you mentioned, that defense, I mean, to see Patrick Mahomes completed 26 passes, that makes me think he's got 400 yards through 50 times, 2 interceptions. A couple of those were tip balls and, kind of had the asterisk next to him. They weren't bad throws by him just trying to create. Again, last night was it reminded me of the prime Mike Vick. I mean, just not wanting to get tackled and just keeping the play alive. And there was a couple times, I mean, we're talking just fingertips of him doing just some of the craziest things you'd ever see, highlight reel stuff that just weren't caught. They were just not plays made. But I mean, has there ever been an athlete with a better, I mean, imagine us talking about a missed shot compilation in the NBA. I mean, you would never see it, but that's what Patrick Mahomes has. Literally, you could put together a 4-minute YouTube video of incompletions that would make you just sit there and go, that's crazy, because that's what he does. He's literally a magical type of player.
He is, man. And I'm looking at the stats. You mentioned some stats of yourself. On the Chiefs side, I'll get to the Buccaneers because it's going to make really speak volumes about what Tom Brady did with his weapons. Leader in targets, not catches, but catches as well. But leader in targets for the Chiefs, Travis Kelce with 15 targets. Tyreek Hill, second in targets, 10. You go to the Buccaneers. Their leader in targets were 2 guys that were not on their team last year. Rob Gronkowski was retired. He had 7 targets yesterday, 6 receptions, 67 yards and 2 touchdowns. Number 2 in targets for the Buccaneers, Antonio Brown. A guy myself who I've been very, very critical of because of the way that he was acting very immature and almost Mr. High and Mighty, almost the guy that said, hey, I'm self-righteous. I am me, do whatever I say because it says, if not if it was his home or if it was on the football field, he felt like he could control everybody, everything at any given time. But he goes down to Tampa. And I remember Bruce Arians coming out and saying, hey, look, grow up or leave. I don't know if that was the correct quote, word for word, but it's very much the thought that Bruce Arians wanted to get across. You're going to grow up, you're going to be a part of our program, our organization, you're going to do things the Buccaneers way and fit into our culture. And at the slight chance you think you're bigger and better than somebody here, you're gone. Antonio Brown has grown up, and man, from his time with Tampa, I can't remember of one time where I've seen his name in the news for anything bad, or there's any time which Antonio Brown has been the Antonio Brown of old. You being a Steelers fan, you may have your own thoughts about Antonio Brown, the receiver or the man of how he conducted himself. I see the look on your face. How he conducted himself on the field, off the field, at home, in the practice facility, whatever it is. Because for so many people, they have a bad idea and a bad thought whenever they hear the name Antonio Brown. But last night and all throughout the season, Antonio Brown was a pro. He acted like a pro on the field when he was playing, off the field on the sidelines. Didn't hear one negative word about him. Rob Gronkowski, a guy that last time he played in the NFL, he was with Tom Brady in New England, and I thought he would never play football again. From the way that his body and the injuries that he had, from his arm to his back, and hearing that, in the offseason, he's 10 pounds heavier, losing 10 pounds possibly, no, he's 10 pounds lighter, gaining 10 pounds. That'll put more pressure on his back that he already hurt. That may actually end up hurting him. But we see Rob Gronkowski getting loose, man. I mean, looking like the younger guy from 3 to 4 years ago, catching touchdown passes, looking light, looking happy, having fun like a kid in a candy shop. That was Rob Gronkowski. Antonio Brown, I like what we saw. I hope it sticks. Rob Gronkowski, 7 targets. I would have not thought before yesterday's game, if you said, Jay, who do you think the 2 leaders in targets for the Buccaneers will be? If you said Rob Gronkowski and Antonio Brown, I would have said, no, man, you're crazy. Maybe Gronkowski. But I think number 2 will be Mike Evans. But that wasn't the case. Antonio Brown proved that Tom Brady can trust him in a big game.
Yeah, and I mean, Antonio Brown, it's just one of those things where you're out of options, and the GOAT, the best quarterback in the league and by far the best leader in sports, and Tom Brady is literally putting his trust in you. So if I think in Antonio Brown's mind, he knows, if he breaks that trust, if things fall apart, I mean, that's the NFL going, man, if Tom Brady can't, if you can't perform for Tom Brady, then how can we put you with any other quarterback? You can't go to a team with a young signal caller. Can't go to a team that's mid-tier. You can't go to a team with a rookie because he's going to overshadow all of them. So Tom Brady was the only option left. And now Antonio Brown's played himself into a position where he can come back to Tampa, which I'm sure he likely will, and want to play with Tom again. But also, I mean, depending on what happens maybe next year, I mean, this dude's still not very old, still very explosive. No. I mean, he could have just made money. I mean, there's a chance he could be a high quality free agent, maybe even as soon as this year. I still think it's a little soon, and I think he'd want to stay another year in Tampa. Gronkowski, same thing. As you mentioned earlier in the year, I still thought he looked very stiff, very worried, very not healthy. And then last night, catching the ball. I mean, when you put him and Travis Kelce side by side, I think at this point everybody would take Kelce. But last night it looked very even. It looked like that was the 2 best tight ends in football, and Gronkowski had the advantage. So, again, I think Gronkowski's a guy that does have a lot of other endeavors, a lot of other openings on his schedule. I could see him saying, okay, this is it. I got the Super Bowl. We did it, Tom. You do what you want to do, man, but I'm out because I can go, make 15 mil doing, sitcoms and reality shows, pro wrestling, ESPN, whatever I want to do. So I could see that being his swan song, getting out of here. Leonard Fournette, as you mentioned, I mean, he's a guy that was sort of looked at as a bust all of a sudden. Now he's come in, and I mean, you got to think this game's probably even different if they would have gave it to him twice on the goal line instead of RJ2, because I mean, he couldn't get in from the one twice, had 2 runs. You give that ball to Fournette, Fournette probably bangs that bad boy in there. So that's probably a game changer right there, even more so. there's a lot of guys. And Mike Evans wasn't completely healthy. I think we knew that. I didn't expect him to have a big game, but still one target's pretty crazy. And the one ball he caught was like the biggest play of the game overall. And I mean, this is just the crazy thing about Tampa. I mean, there's a lot of guys who I think most people wrote off. I mean, I read all offseason. I will gladly say I was not one of them. I thought this was crazy, but there was a lot of people who wrote Tom Brady off, who said that he wouldn't be the same guy in Tampa. He was a system quarterback. He was Belichick's guy. You know, he thrived because of Belichick, because of Josh McDaniels, because of how comfortable he was in that Patriot offense. And I think in some ways that was probably a little bit true, but in other ways, Tom Brady played this season to prove all that wrong. So I think all those words, I mean, he's one of those guys, and he'll tell you he's one of those guys. He eats that up. He's one of those guys who loves when people count him out and you can't do this, you can't do that. I mean, week 4, week 5, people were talking about him and Bruce Arians not clicking. And, you know, which one do you get rid of this offseason? Because they both can't stay. And here we are, you know, February, and they just won the Super Bowl. So, I mean, this is one of those. And I mean, look, Tampa had a great year, and Tampa deserves a Super Bowl win. But I tell you, I would not want to be the week 1 opponent for the Kansas City Chiefs next season. Because, I mean, this is a young team, and I think it's hard to repeat. I mean, I wasn't paying attention, but, I mean, I didn't realize it had been so long since anybody repeated in the NFL. It's been a long time. I mean, I'm guessing since early 2000s. But this Chiefs team is still young, and every year seems like they develop a new playmaker. Edwards-Helaire this year looked amazing. He probably should have got more carries last night instead of putting it all on Mahomes, who is injured, and nobody – or Patrick, you know, doesn't want to talk about the injury, but he was very clearly wobbled. He also recovered from a concussion in 6 days, which from my studying of concussions, that's not really possible. But this guy wasn't healthy and still doing the things he was doing. Well, next year, you know, they'll learn to change up their offense some, and you know, they get to keep Bieniemy, who's going to stick around for another year. That's huge. He deserved a head coaching job 100%, but you get to keep him. That's a win for Andy Reid. There's already people Jay calling for Andy Reid's head, which is, I mean, just the stuff
That's
like that
dumb.
blows my mind.
That's really stupid.
Blows my mind. This Chiefs team will be hungry next year, and that'll change the way they play. It's hard to be hungry as defending champions. It's easy, though. You know, come next year, these guys will be so motivated and just raring to go. And I'm looking forward to seeing what they do next year and what they do in the offseason. I mean, this is a team that's always somehow finds some gems in the offseason. I think Andy Reid and company will do it again.
So you mentioned a back-to-back Super Bowl winning teams. It hasn't happened since Tom Brady did it, I believe, early 2000s, like you mentioned. And then I know the Broncos did it, the late 90s. I know Cowboys did it, I think, in the 90s. But it was really since Tom Brady, the Patriots team. The Patriots won it one year. Then the Buccaneers won it the year after that. Then the Patriots won back-to-back 3 and 4.
2000, 2002, 2003.
Yep. And it's just how rare that feat is. And just thinking about what Tom Brady, what Rob Gronkowski, Bruce Arians, the entire defense, the entire team offensively, what they did together collectively, it was so special, man. And something that I think we'll look back at this 10, 20, 30 years from now and think about just how special that first year is. Think about this really quickly. The first year you go to a team, it's very, very hard to win a Super Bowl or a championship in whatever league you're in. LeBron James, first year with the Lakers. I don't believe he did it.
He didn't go to the playoffs.
No, you're right. He did go to the playoffs. Everyone said Kawhi Leonard first year with the Clippers was going to do it. It was kind of an anomaly. The first year, the only year he was in Toronto, they won the championship, which that was kind of, they were already on that trajectory anyway. He just kind of helped them get over the top. Peyton Manning, a guy that was right alongside Tom Brady as far as competing to be who's the best team, who's the better quarterback, their entire time that Peyton was playing in the NFL. Peyton doesn't play in 2011 due to an injury. People don't know if he can come back and play football anymore. First year in Denver, didn't win a championship. Ironically, which how special it is, that he did go to 2 Super Bowls in 4 years, did win 1. That's amazing in and of itself when you think about what Tom Brady did there. LeBron James in Miami, first year in Miami, didn't win it, but he did go. First year going back to Cleveland, he didn't win it, but he did go. It's just so hard to do in your first year with a new team, especially when that new team has a new coach, and that new coach was not there previously in that system. Bruce Arians wasn't even a coach previously. He was in a booth calling games for CBS as a broadcaster. Now he comes out of that, goes back into coaching, And man, it was so much fun to watch. Cody, let's have some fun real quick. I texted you about this earlier. Super Bowl 54, kind of PTI style. Super Bowl 54 was blank. Now, I got to apologize. Mine is 2 words. I told you one only, but my first word is A, just letter A. So I figured putting that word there, you could go ahead and go with 2 words there. But to me, Super Bowl 54 was a reminder. You mentioned this earlier. All week long, not many people talked about the 2 left tackles, starting left tackles for the Chiefs that were out. All we hear about is Patrick Mahomes and Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Travis Kelce and Mecole Hardman and Tyreek Hill. You hear about all the weapons. Maybe, just maybe, Sammy Watkins may have a big game. Not expected, but maybe, just maybe it might happen. And what we saw is something that I preach all the time, but for some reason this week, it went out of my mind. If you don't have a solid offensive line, if you don't win the battle in the trenches on both sides of the line, you're going to lose the game. And you're going to get embarrassed. 31-9, like I said earlier, no one really expected that to be the final outcome if the Buccaneers won the game. What the Buccaneers did do, they controlled the trenches on offense, really maneuver that defensive line of the Chiefs, did whatever they wanted to. Tom Brady had sometimes all day to throw the ball. The defense of the Buccaneers, that front four, now people say, oh, the front four and the defense of the Buccaneers, they allowed Patrick Mahomes to scare him, and they were just rushing for the entire time. If you go back and even watch some quick clips, some quick highlights, they blitzed every now and then. They blitzed a quarterback one time and forced Patrick Mahomes to rush way before he was even able to go through his progression to figure out what receiver to throw the ball to. But it was a reminder. Don't fall into the trend of the day. Skill positions, cornerbacks and safeties, they rule everything. The football game is one, it's a team game. And number 2 is one in the trenches. Offensive line, defensive line. The Buccaneers controlled both. They won the battle in the trenches. And to me, it was a reminder. Don't fall into what they're saying on TV because they're just trying to get clicks and get clickbait. Remember, football at times can be a simple game. You win the battle in the trenches on offense and defense. You have a really good shot to win the game. Cody, Super Bowl 54 was what to you?
It's tough because I'm going back and forth. But, the word I would take is lacking. Now, look, man, it's awesome that Tom Brady gets another ring, and there's all kinds of storylines, and I think a lot of mass media will be pretty excited for what they have with the storyline they get here. But from a fan perspective, from watching it, I mean, this is one of the most just games I've watched in a long time, man. Yeah. And I mean, there just wasn't a lot going on. The game went by really fast, which not complaining about that because, like I said, we all had to come back to work on Monday. So when I looked and Tom Brady's taking that final knee, and I'm like, it's 10-17. My goodness, I can still stay up and watch a couple things. Then I just went to bed. But to me, it just didn't have that life. And first quarter ended, like, all right, Kansas City struggled a little. They'll get it together. Halftime comes, like, all right, they're about to go to the locker room, get fired up. Second half's coming. Third quarter ends, I retweeted the Atlanta Falcon tweet where they said 15 more minutes. Like, well, we've been here before. Here comes Patrick Mahomes. And then just nothing ever happens. So again, props to how good Tampa Bay played. And, it's a great story. It's a great moment again for Tom Brady. This is a Hall of Fame, another just notch in the belt for Bruce Arians. I couldn't be happier because that's a great guy, a great coach. But it just lacked. It just was one of those things where I think a lot of times the Super Bowl is a talking point for a week. From what I've heard today, doing sports radio and listening to sports radio and kind of reading things, I really think this flames out in a day. I really think tomorrow, if Carson Wentz is traded, or if there's a big rumor about Deshaun Watson, or if something happens in the NBA, or just any other story happens in these Super Bowls, we're done. We're not going to talk about it anymore because it's over. And everybody's going to just kind of be ready to move on to whatever's next. And I think, this may linger on for another day because, of course, you can always talk about there's going to be hot takes about what the Chiefs need to do and change and all that. And although they're, the answer is nothing. I mean, there's still, you don't make any changes. This team's probably right back here next year. But I really think that it was just lacking those moments where you could sit around and talk about it for a week. And that's really rare with the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl is one of those rare one-off title games. You got to remember NBA's playing best of 7 and NHL's best of 7, and then you have I'm missing one. NBA's best of 7, Major League Baseball best of 7. All these things have series, and then college basketball, it's a long tournament. So sometimes we don't even talk about the championship game. We focus on something that happened in the Final Four, the Elite Eight. The Super Bowl is one big thing. They even take that week off to build it up and to get you there and get you pumped for it. So usually there's like so much life in it. And I mean, this Super Bowl just felt lacking to me. So that might be a little negative of a connotation. I get that, but I just think it sets up a big offseason. The offseason's already been so wild, Jay. We've already seen a lot of things we weren't expecting from Stafford trade. The Stafford Goff move is just a wild trade, a wild transition. You have to think that as much as Houston's fine, Deshaun Watson has to be moved. He has to be moved somewhere. Pretty much everybody has confirmed that Carson Wentz will be traded as soon as within the next 10 days. You got to wonder, who's there. Your Indianapolis Colts probably got to be a front runner to be making some good calls about Carson Wentz, because that's a much more gettable player than Deshaun Watson. I don't think I'd be able to give up all that they want for Watson if I was a team like the Colts, who are really ready to win right now. There's going to be a lot more quarterback talks as we move forward. Again, you start looking at some teams that seem kind of solidified with veterans. Of course, I'll chime in. I think the Steelers are going to have some big decisions to make in terms of what they want to do with Ben Roethlisberger, as they're going to be in a division with a bunch of 20-some-year-old quarterbacks who are not even in their prime yet. I mean, you got to make a decision there. I think there's going to be a lot of stuff happening this offseason, and I think that will immediately take all the attention off this Super Bowl, because there wasn't a ton of talking points besides the legacy of Tom Brady, and that was going to be the talking point either way. If he would have lost, we would have said, oh, well, he made it. He made it with a new team his first year. He's a Hall of Famer. He wins it. Oh, my God, he's the greatest of all time. So, I mean, that was already going to be a talking point, and besides that, there's really nothing else to go on. So to me, that was the word I go with. Again, I know that's not the positive go-lucky word, but I do think the Super Bowl this year was lacking in terms of just life. I just feel like, I mean, it's Monday. What time are we doing this, Jay? 4:30. I mean, as of now, to me, I'm already seeing some other stuff start to trend, where the NBA started to make their push to get all the headlines. And I mean, again, once our phones pop up that there's been a quarterback traded, it will be officially the offseason. And of course, the draft is right around the corner as well. So I just think, the NFL has done such an amazing job this season. You got to think over 260 games and not one cancellation is amazing.
It
It's
is.
just amazing. But, to end it on a note like last night, I'm sure is not really what the NFL wanted. I'm sure that, I think the NFL is probably happy Tampa Bay won, because it's pretty cool they're in their home stadium and it's Tom Brady. But I'm sure they would rather that final score been 34-31 or 31-28 than, Kansas City not score one touchdown. I mean, you mentioned defense, and defense wins championships. As a coach, fan, former player, we all know that. But I think the way sports are going, the NFL is probably hopeful that last night would have a combined score of 80 or 90 points. So, but I mean, like you mentioned, no matter what year it is, no matter the way the NFL's changed, defense is going to win you championships probably 9 out of 10 times.
It will, man. And you talk about lacking. You're not the only person that thought that or utilized some type of word or phrase that falls into that category of lacking of what was there with the game. And I'm a person, I hate blowouts. Hate's a strong word. I really don't like blowouts at all. If I'm covering a game or covering a team, it's a blowout, I'm like, wow. So I have to sit here, watch the entire game, try to take notes during the game, and then try to make up something to talk about, when early on you could tell when the game is going to go which way, and then you could tell when the game's over. It's like, okay, well, I can wrap this things up, kind of get my thoughts going. But last night, man, I wanted to turn the game off, and that's how bad. Like when you say lacking, that's exactly how to me it was. I mean, it was a game that lacked excitement. It was a game that lacked the back and forth. It was almost one-sided the entire time. Yes, it was close early, but we all realize that Patrick Mahomes, yes, if he's not scoring a lot of points, it's probably going to be a lower scoring game. It's going to be a defensive game, and hopefully he can keep it close. He couldn't do anything. It's bad, lacking, lackluster. A game that, like you said, many people will not talk about for a very long time, maybe even over the next few days. Think about this really quick, Cody. This year has just been odd. We had the national championship, Alabama, Ohio State, a blowout, one-sided. You have teams in college basketball, And I'm saying this and not trying to, I know there's going to be a broad scope of teams out there, college basketball fans. You have your Duke, you have your North Carolina, you have your Kentucky. Those of you that live around me, you have your Indiana that aren't even in the top 25, that aren't even schools that are really playing well. And you have a Michigan State, didn't even mention them. They might not make the tournament. And then we come back with this game last night. As odd as 2020 was, I hope 2021, we don't have all of this like, oh, well, championship, it's going to be a blowout. Like the one thing the NBA does not want, especially right now with everything going on in the country that they're doing in their league, whenever the NBA Finals rolls around, they don't want a 4-0 sweep. They don't want one team just wiping through the competition to where the outcome of the NBA Finals is, oh, whoever the best team is, they're winning by 20 points every single night. I don't want that as a sports podcast, as a sports fan. I know other people don't as well. But I hope this trend, man, of you have your college football blowout, NFL championship blowout. The Blue Bloods in college basketball aren't really that good this year. I mean, Duke, North Carolina, that game, dude, I'm not going to lie to you. I was all tuned in. I was ready to go, ready to watch it from start to finish. I did get home a little bit later once the game got on. But I ended up turning the game off because it really wasn't like a good basketball game. Somebody that was on Twitter said the final score, the final outcome, margin of victory is a whole lot different than the way that the game was actually played. And I think that's a great description and way to put how that game was. As sports fans, we want things to be close. But right now, it doesn't seem like things are going like that in the sports are watching every single day.
The good news is, and I really again think last night was just one of those freak occurrences. The Alabama game was pretty shocking too, to be honest. So now that I'm thinking about it, maybe we are in for a bad treat. There is a lot of parity in the NBA and college basketball, for that matter. In the NBA especially, college basketball maybe not so much, but I do think this is one of those years where you may get 1 versus 2 in the championship game, but there is no way Baylor and Gonzaga doesn't deliver. I mean, that game got taken away from us back in December. Those are by far the 2 best teams above and beyond anybody else in college basketball. It'd be great to see those 2 teams play each other as undefeated teams in the national title game. I think that would be a fantastic game, and I cannot see either team blowing that game out. The NBA, I really don't think that'll happen. I think if anything can save us from that would be the NBA, because, I mean, this year is one of those years where I really think, I mean, you got to look at the Western Conference in the NBA right now. If I asked you right now off the top of your head, Jay, who do you think the best team in the Western Conference is? Who would you say?
Lakers.
It's Utah. Utah has the best record in the NBA. So when you look at that, I mean, I don't think anybody's picking Utah to win the NBA title.
No.
But, I mean, that's where we are. Utah's 1. Phoenix is 4. I can't even name a San Antonio Spur. I mean, DeMar DeRozan, is he still on that team? I mean, Rudy Gay, are those guys Spurs? I don't even know.
I think DeRozan's still there. I think Rudy Gay wanted to get out of town, wherever he was. I forgot all about him, just being honest with you.
They're the 5th best team in the West. And I mean, that's where we are right now with the NBA. So I do think you're going to be safe in the NBA. There's a lot of parity there. College basketball has been an odd year, but man, you know what it comes down to, in my opinion, is fans, is that presence of your arena. I mean, there is no more home court advantage. It's now who plays best on that day. And I am a Duke fan, and it's been a miserable year to be a Duke fan, but I think it's very apparent that all these years of people talking down about the Cameron Crazies really should stick up and say that they were wrong. Mm-hmm. I think having that 6-man advantage is a game changer, especially in years like these past, I mean, how long's the one and done era been going on? I mean, 10 plus years. When you're a freshman, man, it's sometimes that grit and heart and determination, it just don't really exist because you all have it. And especially the other team, they all have it. But when you got those crazy fans just backing you, it's easy to come back from 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 down. And that's something these freshmen just can't do with cardboard cutouts and poster boards and piped in sound. It just doesn't happen. And these freshmen for Duke, these freshmen for Kentucky, they're having trouble finding that little shot in the arm you get when there's a big and one. I mean, I was watching the Duke Carolina game, and first of all, as you kind of mentioned or related to, the score don't even matter. That was an ugly, horrible game. I mean, it really was, where it was just hard to watch. But I just think the lack of fans, and I think last night in the Super Bowl, we got to see a little bit of that come back to life. That those fans were very Tampa Bay driven because
Yeah,
the
yeah,
game was in Tampa Bay.
yeah.
I think it helped. I think it was a true home field advantage for Tom Brady and company. I'm not saying that was the difference. Of course, the defense was the difference, but I do think as time goes on, we get the more vaccines out, we get a little bit more comfortable with the new world we're living in or gonna live in, and these things start to open up. I've not read I don't think there's even been a final decision made, but I know the whole tournament will take place in your neck of the woods over there, really all throughout Indianapolis. I think if there was a few more fans let in, if they're able to open things up just a bit, you would see a few more upsets than you have in the college basketball season overall. But I think once we get to the tournament, I think you'll see senior led teams make runs. I think the Final Four will look like a bunch of old men. I think you'll see Gonzaga, you'll see Baylor, you'll see a team like Iowa. I know they've had a few slip ups here lately, but that's a senior led group. You'll see a
Yeah,
team like
yeah.
Iowa in the Final Four, and then you'll see a team that maybe we're not even thinking of. A team, maybe like I'm slipping my mind now who I was going to say, like a Virginia style team, maybe a team like that will be able to sort of sneak in the back door. Maybe even a team like Tennessee who's starting to play good at the right time. A team that's got some older kids mixed in with some young athletes. I think if there's not a big fan base, you'll see old teams who know how to play with each other, make runs. And I think that's just what we're looking at. I think lack of fans have changed all sports. And I think last night was an indicator that, things are going to change. I mean, if that was an empty stadium Super Bowl, I don't know if the exact outcome would have been the same. I still don't, I'm not saying Kansas City would have won, but I'm just saying, I think these are changing a lot of sports. From a big fight fan, I've seen it definitely in fights where the guys who are training better, who are a bit more veterans, who are a bit more explosive, are winning these fights. There's not as many comebacks, not late round comebacks, because you just don't have those fans to get behind you. It's just an empty place. So I think that's a bigger deal than people are making it out to be. And I mean, I understand we're being safe, but I do think once fans start being able to come back to certain things, a lot of things would be different. I really think Kentucky and Duke's record and North Carolina's record would be a little different this year if they all had fans. I really do.
Well, fans think about the regular summer where Calipari specifically. You mentioned Kentucky. Calipari spends all summer getting those freshmen acclimated, whatever offseason program that he has that goes on there in Lexington. It works out very, very well for the team because it allows them to kind of open gym style, figure out who it is and mesh and gel, and figure out who's going to be the upper hand. So when they get to game 1, game 2, game 3, you've already gone through 2 months of a gauntlet and practice to where your first opponent, man, this is a breeze. This ain't nothing. Your non-conference tournament styles that you're playing in November and December, this is nothing. This is a breeze. And that's why I think Calipari's one and done style has worked, is because he has a 2 month or a month and a half style gauntlet in the summer before they get to school in the fall. Because they know when school in the fall, you got to hit the books. You got to at least keep your grades up so you don't get kicked off the team. And Calipari, he's lacking it right now because really I think the offseason program for him wasn't able to be what he's normally used to doing. Dude, I saw my dad recently, and he looked at me and said, Jay, did Duke stop playing basketball this year? I said, Dad, what do you mean? Now I'm laughing. And he's like, well, I haven't seen them play basketball. Did they stop playing basketball? I said, well, Coach K earlier in the year, he did end up he canceled all non-conference games due to the virus, and he was thinking about how to properly handle that with the youngsters, his players, how to maneuver things until the ACC conference schedule started. But he thought, man, I ain't heard Duke play. I haven't watched Duke play a basketball game in a long time. I'm surprised he didn't say North Carolina because for a while they were playing just as bad. Now the record's better than Duke, but the play on the court, it's not what we're used to from Duke, from North Carolina, from Kentucky, from all of these schools that are blue bloods in college basketball. It's just not the same. But you're talking about fans. I know one thing here locally. You call high school basketball and high school sports there in Tennessee. Here locally for the state championship, they're going to have the state championship game. At least I know for the boys' side. I'm not sure about the girls. But for the boys' side, it's going to be in Lucas Oil Stadium. The football stadium where the Colts play. Normally it's where the Pacers play. But I think that is for the fans to be able to go there and to have more fans there. Yes, it's a larger space. It's not going to carry and track the sound like a basketball arena will,
Right.
but you're able to have more fans. You're going to get more money, which everybody wants to make money right now, but you're also going to allow for more fans to be there. The youngsters that have fought all year long to get to a state championship, they can look up and say, oh, maybe 5,000, maybe 10,000 in a game because the IHSAA is going to allow for more people to go. And I think that experience for them spread out, the sound will be spread out like crazy. They're going to, I know, safely have entrance and exits and mask and all that stuff that's been going on for at least a year now. But I do think, man, that fan aspect, you talk about Duke, Carolina. One reason to me, I turned the game off. And even I think the game would have been a whole lot better with fans. Dude, there's no fans there. It's in Cameron Indoor. And I'm used to seeing people hands out. You know how it is, they're waving at you when you're passing the ball in. That's not there. It was, and even with the 25,000 fans at the Super Bowl, you could still feel it was lacking something. Whenever, I'm not sure whenever we get full stadiums again, you'll see the broadcast, you being able to call games, it may be an effect on you. Me watching games will be an effect on me because it'll feel more normal than the 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 or 5,000 we're seeing at football games right now.
Yeah, I'll tell you, from just a broadcasting standpoint, here in Tennessee, we were under orders to just have family, only in-house relatives, with what our governor said.
It's been like that for most of the time in Indiana as well. Just family, just opened up to like 25% for some places, but even then, they're still restricting how many can get into the games.
Yeah, that's what we are too. We just got lifted, I think, about 2 weeks ago to have 1/3 venue size allowed. But the biggest thing to me was they allowed cheerleaders, dancers, and pet bands and student sections back in. See, we didn't have that for months, and I mean, to me, that just killed the atmosphere of basketball. I mean, it literally felt like you were calling a rec league or a junior varsity or I mean, a pickup game for that matter, which makes the way you broadcast the game much more difficult. You don't really get excited as much, and I've noticed it in broadcast as well. My pet peeve during this entire thing, and I don't know what it is. I want everybody to be safe. We've all known people that have gotten sick or even passed away from this, but at the end of the day, if your job is a sports broadcaster, which mine is, I have went to every single high school. I've went to many middle schools. I've went to many schools that aren't local. I've traveled to schools. Probably here in about 2 weeks, I'm going to travel to Murfreesboro into a large arena to do a ball game, and I'm literally just a high school broadcaster. ESPN doing these studio games has absolutely killed me, has driven me crazy.
Yeah.
If you do not feel comfortable enough to send your broadcaster and keep them safe and do these things, have them get tested, wear their masks, have an isolated place to broadcast the game. If you don't feel comfortable doing that, then just show us the game with no broadcaster. Just have us show us the game. Studio broadcasts are the worst thing to ever happen to ESPN. And I mean, if we're going to watch open gym style basketball games, so let's have open gym sound. Let's just hear the players talking, the coaches. That's what I want. I hate piped in crowd noise. I hate studio broadcasts. I hate right now when they go to the studio for halftime, they got one guy there, one guy at home, and another guy there. Like, just keep the guy who's at home, just tell him to not be on the broadcast.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can do it with just two people. Like, I hate studio settings right now, so I had to get that off my chest. But those things drive me crazy. I mean, I'm hoping this is all about to start to really die down. The Super Bowl hopefully was a good sign. I hope numbers don't just get crazy in the next week or so, because that will really kill any chance we have of the NBA starting to open back up, hopefully the tournament allowing some fans in, and then of course it'll wrinkle down to where I am at high school basketball. But I mean, I just think atmospheres don't exist right now, to be honest with you, and I think that's a major part of a lot of college basketball programs is the atmosphere. I think we've seen it in college football as well. I mean, Alabama for a long time. I mean, Alabama's been the best team in college football for 10 years.
Yeah.
But there is years where they play in situations where the atmosphere is against them, and that's hurt them and even costed them wins. I truly believe that plays a major factor, especially in college sports. Not so much pro sports. I don't think it's as big of a thing in pro sports. I remember, maybe the last time I've really seen that was like when Golden State first started playing real good. They had an atmosphere. It was incredibly hard to play the Warriors at home. That's kind of changed now since they moved out of Cal Palace and all that. But this is a college sport thing, and I really think those are major factors for teams like Duke and Carolina. And the offseason programming is 100% true, but I do think, these atmospheres are just not the same. And I can't wait till they are again. I really think it changes sports. I mean, I really think it feels like you're watching open gym. I mean, it really does. And I agree with you. The Duke Carolina game to me was a really hard watch because A, that was sloppy, terrible basketball. B, I had a really bad feeling Duke was going to get blown out. I'm glad it seemed as close as it was because it wasn't. But C, I mean, I feel like these are 10 kids or 20 kids who just met up at a gym somewhere in Carolina and said, let's play. Like, it did not feel like Duke Carolina, but at the end of the day, man, we can say all this, but it's good they're playing. It's good we have this to watch. I mean, me and you remember back, if we would have done this podcast 11 months ago, we would have been just making up stuff to talk about. And
yeah,
as
man,
fun,
we did.
as fun as it was watching and talking about documentaries, I'm glad we were able to talk about live sports again. So I'm glad they've been able to play. I mean, that's been awesome. Everybody's had to really do some crazy stuff to make it work. From the level I'm at with high school basketball, seeing all the stuff they do, the way they've got the seats set up and the way they're cleaning, and they clean the balls between plays. That stuff's just crazy to me. But I mean, they're doing everything they can to make sure that they don't have games canceled, especially now that we're getting close to tournament time. And we're about to start spring sports, and luckily that means the weather's nicer. We'll be outside, and hopefully by the time that we enter summer, a lot of this is calmed down and we can really full-fledged start talking about a true, real college football season, and the NFL coming back, and a true basketball season. Because I mean, I don't really mean this, Jay, but I mean, at this point, I do think a lot of these titles should have a little asterisk next to them. Like, not a big asterisk, not like they cheated, but just like a little asterisk that just sort of says that, this year was very different. And I do think in terms of crowds and things like that, a lot of things would be different. But, again, I'm glad we played. I'm glad we had a Super Bowl, because I think there was a lot of times in week 1 and week 2, especially when the Tennessee Titans had their outbreak, I really did think that we could be in a situation like that. So, or even worse, maybe we would have an empty stadium Super Bowl, because that's not a Super Bowl. So I'm glad we had a Super Bowl. There was fans there. We had a live halftime. I really thought we were going to be in a year where we didn't have a Super Bowl. And at the end of the day, I think the best part about all these weird things we've had to go through, all the things we're going to talk and make fun of, maybe all the even pet peeves that I have, it's good that we had a sporting event like the Super Bowl, because last night was the most normal sporting event that America's had in the last year.
That is true. And I know one thing, you talk about broadcasting. I am not a broadcaster. I would love to broadcast games at some point, but I do kind of watch and listen and try to feel what the broadcasters are going through, what they're watching at the time. A studio broadcast, I don't know if you'd have done anything remote, but from what I've heard, only looking at the computer screen or TV screen or the 4 or 5 screens that are around on your table, you're missing parts of the game. You don't get the entire view of everything, even from the sidelines that when you're at the arena or at the football field. You don't get that aspect either. And I think one thing about NFL broadcast, with as weird as it was to watch football being played in so many empty stadiums, their broadcasters were at the games. Yep. So they had a feel of not just the game itself, of what's going on the field, but also off the field as well. And I go back to college football. I'm a big college head. I love college sports. I know you do as well. BYU played Navy the first Monday night in college football this year. And I know Kirk Herbstreit was on the call. I want to say Chris Fowler was with him. May have been Reese Davis, one of the two. But Kirk Herbstreit said after the game, one of the best things about that game, even though there was no fans there, you could hear the BYU players and the coaches getting hype on the sidelines and cheering on their players, and being able to hear the pop of the pads and the helmet. That brought an excitement to him that, even though he's at practice all the time and he's really tapped in, tuned in more so than maybe anybody else in college football, him being able to hear that and to feel that and be able to hear the hits like, oh, I felt it in my bones, that brought a different aspect to that very broadcast. College football, I know sometimes I think they were remote, which I wasn't really a fan of, but you get it. But NFL as a whole, they were there, right there, doing whatever kind of testing, kind of isolation, whatever needed to be done so that broadcast could be done properly, so that broadcaster could be there to help you and I, when we're not there at the game, to watch the game and make it as enjoyable as it can be. And I do think with Romo and Nance and whoever else is ever CBS, they really were able to feel more normal calling the game, because of the 25,000 fans up over there. The cardboard there, man. I'm going to end on a little bit of a goofy note. One about the cardboard and then one about prop bets. Cardboard sitting there at the game. If I'm there at the game, let's say me and my parents or whatever, I don't have a girlfriend or wife or anything. So say I'm at the game with some of my friends or my mom, I want to surprise my mom with a trip to a Super Bowl. My mom is sitting there and I'm sitting there, and right next to her, right next to myself and other people that are with us is cardboard on one side, cardboard on another. I like my space, man. I like my space. I don't know if I'm going to a game, especially if I'm with my buddies and there's nobody around us. There's me, there's a seat. There's my buddy, there's a seat. We got to like to spread out and stuff like that. That cardboard, man, after like maybe the first 10 minutes sitting down, I'm trying to throw that thing, trying to get it out of here, dude, because the cardboard, I just can't stand it. But I get it, like, at least watching it on TV, it looked full as a football stadium, but it didn't sound full, man.
No, and even my wife, whenever the game started, she said there's definitely a lot more people there than there should be. And I said, I don't think they're all real people. And at least they used the 3D like legit. Because I mean, I've watched a few games this year. I think it's college basketball games, maybe been a Duke game. I mean, they use like just poster board and just like printouts. I mean, come on, man. Like, just leave empty seats. We all know we're in a pandemic. Nobody's gonna judge you for being in an empty room. We know you don't need all these things. But last night in the Super Bowl, I kind of did the same thing. They were 3D. They were good looking cutouts. But hey, look. From my perspective, I'd rather sit next to a cardboard cutout than some drunk dude screaming stuff.
Yeah, good point.
Me. So
good point.
I don't know. There definitely was a feel last night, though. I actually thought the game sounded pretty good, and I do think I'm glad they didn't pipe in more noise. Piped in noise is another kind of pet peeve, and again, I get it. But I mean, I remember watching a baseball game that first week and thought, this is stupid. Like, and not everybody's a fan like I am. I love hearing the pop of the pads. I love basketball more than anything. I love hearing them call out plays and the coaches, and then going back to like fights. Oh man, when you actually hear somebody hit somebody, I mean, it's a game changer. So I love that. The piped in sound to me is just silly. I mean, imagine going to an open gym or the YMCA and they'd be like, all right, time to play. And they just hit a button. You hear the sound. Like, that's just so silly.
Yeah.
Like, just play ball. But no, I think the cardboard cutouts, man, I'd be fine. They should keep that around, especially for teams, like if you're terrible, like the Jaguars, like that's what they should do. If they're only selling like 3,000 tickets, just keep the cutouts, just keep the cardboard cutouts and have them there year round. Make it look like a Madden game where I'll never forget, Jacksonville back in like 2006, Madden had a feature where you could the fans' attendance was based on your performance.
Yes.
So every year, Madden, when they added that feature, Jacksonville sucked. So by week 15 or week 16, when Jacksonville would play a live game, there would be only like 1,000 fans there, and you could see empty stadiums around the game. And the owner, Mr. Khan, seen that and straight called EA Sports and said, "You got to take that out of the game. We're not going to be in your game anymore." That's one of my favorite stories of all time. That he legit called them and said, "You got to take that feature out." And they legit did. They legit patched the game and took that feature out to where every stadium was always full. I just love that story. I had to throw that in there.
Dude, you mentioned baseball and how they had piped in crowd noise and whatever they did there. I remember I was watching a Cubs game early on in the season, and it was on Fox. And Fox was like, "Oh, we had this no innovation. Oh, we have all these virtual fans.
Yeah.
The virtual fans aren't even in the seats. Some of them are on the field, and as the ball is moving, the virtual fans move as well." I'm like, "Dude, what are you doing?" But I mean, it's stuff that you and I get to laugh about. And joke about.
They use the Sims people. That was my favorite part. It was like from the Sims.
Yes.
Awesome.
I'm gonna end on this note. So yesterday, before the game, Mad Dog Sports Radio had Pat McAfee's show. Him and the guys were there doing their live radio show, 3 hours leading into the kickoff of the game, and actually kind of their show overlapped with the coin toss and like part of the first quarter. Well, I didn't see this yesterday, but I saw it today. Pat McAfee tweeted out a video. It was him on one side, AJ Hawk on the other, and it was a coin toss. Pat McAfee put $30,000 down that tails would be what was up for the coin toss. It was heads.
Ugh.
And Pat McAfee, you could tell, like, they're cussing this stuff. Him and the boys there on the show, and F-bombs are thrown. XM radio, so that stuff flies, but they're upset and mad. And AJ Hawk, all he said was, "I'm sorry." And he said it so casual, so like laid back, like, "I warned you not to put $30,000 down on the coin toss." And I even said, if I was doing it, I would go with heads over tails. You went with tails because some people believe tails never fails.
Never fails.
But buddy, it surely did. And luckily, he's financially stable and set that his show is doing well, even football stuff and comedy stuff. He's not hurting for money. But $30,000, buddy, that hurts right down the drain because basically you're just waiting on nature to be like, oh, well, the coin's going up in the air. Hopefully nature is on my side and I get my payday. Nah, you didn't. Heads won, tails lost, and you're out of $30,000. Hopefully your wife didn't kill him when he went home.
Prop bets are hard, man. I'll be the first to admit Tennessee just legalized sports betting, so I've been all over it since January, man. I've made a lot of crazy ones too. None of them have worked out yet, since you can clearly tell I'm not rich yet, or I'd have this all cleaned up. But no, man, I have a couple of friends that were doing the prop bets last night. See, prop bets make me uncomfortable because they're 50-50. Like 50-50 is not good odds. I think I bet on a lot of NBA games. I bet on first points, first scores. I think tonight actually I did one, but it's just which team scores first, and it's such a risk because I mean you don't know. It's not about who's the best team. They just let each other score the first 8 minutes of an NBA game. Mm-hmm. So like tonight, let's see, I got $5 on Milwaukee scoring first against Denver, so we need that to happen. That's my bet tonight. But no, man, sports betting, because it's been illegal in Tennessee, so I've always seen betting odds and always watch people's shows and be like, I don't know what any of that means. Here, this last month, I've become like, my brain's full. I know everything, and well, I don't know everything because I've lost money, but I'm learning. But $30K on a coin toss is the silliest thing I've ever heard. If you're not rich, rich, that ain't nothing. That's me putting $2 on the coin toss to win $5. I mean, that's insane. But yeah, that's coin tosses. That's 250-50. I don't like 50-50 bets. I don't like those. Those scare me. I don't like them.
I don't either, man. Cody, this has been fun. Any lasting words? I know we talk football, basketball, betting, kind of all over the place. Any last words about the game itself? Super Bowl, either Buccaneers or Chiefs, as we wrap this up.
I just will say that I really think that, as good of a time it was for Tampa Bay looked good. Tom Brady looked good. I don't think, which again, now that I'm about to say it, don't ever bet against Tom Brady, but I really think Kansas City will be in a prime position next year to go on a tear. I don't think they'll fall off. I think next year could be a year where they're again 14-2, 15-1, 16-0 maybe, if everybody's healthy and everybody's back. I mean, Patrick Mahomes is still like 26, 27 years old. He's getting better. Last night was maybe his best performance. They're still going to have Travis Kelce. Who knows what happens with guys like Le'Veon Bell and some of those other receivers there. But I mean, that core is going to stay the same, and that coaching staff can't talk about how big it is. That coaching staff is mostly going to stay put and stay together. I think Tampa Bay will probably stay mostly together as well. But I mean, again, you got to wonder if Father Time's eventually going to get Tom. Probably not, though. He's probably going to win 2 or 3 more. But I would just say, I really think if you were a betting man, since that's where we are, Kansas City for a Super Bowl pick next year is a pretty safe and pretty comfortable bet that I would be comfortable making. I really think Kansas City, I think they're going to be trouble next year. Kansas City, Buffalo, Baltimore, and then to the NFC. It's hard to say right now, but I mean, I would say the Packers and then the Bucks are your by far 5 favorites for next year. And I'm a bigger fan of the offseason than I am the regular season sometimes because there's all kinds of stuff to talk about. I do also think that, man, we're about to see a crazy offseason. I really do. Here's a hot one for you, Jay. I think in the next 30 days, we're going to see a trade executed between Houston and Green Bay that will swap Deshaun Watson and Aaron Rodgers. You heard it here first, Jay. It's coming.
As a guy whose team is in the AFC South, if Aaron Rodgers goes from Green Bay down to Houston, I will be highly upset because Watson is good. Aaron Rodgers is first ballot. I don't want that guy to be anywhere near the AFC South, especially in an organization, because he'll start knocking heads, cussing people out, doing things that happen in locker rooms, locker room talk that stays in locker rooms. He'll bring that down to Green Bay and be like, look, this ain't about to work with me here. Y'all want to win? I'm just going to be the de facto GM. You ain't got to pay me GM money. Just call me the GM act like I'm the GM. Just don't give me the official title. Because we're going to get this defense right, get me all the receivers I need. O-line will block, get me a couple backs behind me, and we're going to run this train, run this division, and get to the Super Bowl. I hope you're wrong, because I don't want Watson in the AFC South. I don't want Aaron Rodgers in the AFC South. But for Texans fans listening to this right now, that may have been the best news they have heard about their football team in a very long time. Cody Guinn, thanks for coming back. I appreciate it, man. Hopefully to have you on again sometime soon. Probably college basketball, because as it sits right now, it is February 8th. In a month from now, we'll be right in the heart of college basketball tournaments, conference tournament season. Then the week after that will be the NCAA tournament. I'll get my bracket filled out. You'll get your bracket filled out. Maybe, just maybe, this may be set in stone. It may not be, guys. You never know what's going on with Cody and I. Cody may be back for the NCAA tournament, because there's going to be a lot to talk about. Some sleeper teams, some teams up top that might get upset. Hey, just stay tuned. You never know when Cody will be back. Cody, thanks for coming back, man. I really enjoyed it.
Can't wait, man. I have Duke winning my NIT bracket. That's for sure. Thanks, Jay.
Thank you, and once again, thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Jay Stevens Podcast. As always, you can follow me on Twitter at jstevens07. You can also send all of your emails to jstevenspod@gmail.com. Remember to always subscribe, rate, and review. It's a great way for people that are searching for a new podcast to listen to come across this one. Then remember to always get the word out about the podcast via word of mouth. The things that we enjoy in life, we are almost willing and wired to tell other people about. So no matter if this was your first episode or if you have been listening since episode number 1, be sure to let people know about the podcast. This has been episode 174 of the Jay Stevens Podcast. I will see you next time.